Good morning, or good afternoon, or good evening, everyone. It is my great honor and pleasure to present to you the work of an open access cross-domain approach to analyzing the impact of extreme events on the electricity sector. What we learned from COVID-19 and the 2021 Texas winter outage. My name is Lei Xie. I'm a professor at Texas A&M University. And what I'm presenting to you here is the result of collaboration with a large group of faculty collaborators, industry collaborators, as well as postdoc and graduate students. I'm going to acknowledge them as we go through the slides. What I'm going to talk to you about first is I'm going to talk to you about the electricity sector under transition. And I'm going to make the case that it is becoming an increasingly important infrastructure to support the transition and the massive climate solutions. Then I'm going to talk about how do we start to think about the impact of extreme events and analyze their impact on the electricity sector using the US and Texas as case studies. I'm going to present to you two recent pieces of work, one on the COVID-19's impact on the electricity sector and a cross-domain data-driven approach. The other one is on the very recent February 2021 Texas winter outage and the cross-domain data-driven analysis. And I'm going to draw some concluding remarks on what might be an exciting research agenda for a large community like ours. So these are a recently published Joule commentary that a group of us got together talking about toward carbon neutral electricity and mobility. Is the grid infrastructure ready? And our opinion is that it is not ready. And there is a tremendous amount of research and development need efforts, as well as policy advances that is needed to make the grid as a key enabling infrastructure to support the ambitious climate goals. And we also had a companion op-ed page at the Hill. So if you think about why does electricity sector matter, you can go to the largest greenhouse gas emitter by sectors, such as the chart that you see here. And transportation and electricity are the two leading sectors in terms of emitting greenhouse gases. And it seems that the consensus has been that to tackle the emission problems, you have to tackle the top two sectors. And to tackle the top two sectors, it seems that there has been some level of consensus that the critical path towards the carbon neutrality is to first decarbonizing the electricity generation sector as much as we could, so that electricity is generated through clean sources. And the second piece is to electrify the transportation sector so that the transportation sector will be powered through cleaner electricity portfolio. And while these are ambitious goals, and certainly we are making great strides towards that direction, we want to make the point that is the grid infrastructure ready for this? And if it's not ready, how should we advance the research and development to make it more ready for that? And that is really within that in mind that we would like to share with you our vision of the future energy systems research, which starts from technological basis and trying to take advantage of all the great advances in hardware, in software, in data, in computing, and also try to leverage the amount of data and economic benefits that these new technological solutions might offer to the industry. But it doesn't stop there. You also have to go through the policy angle and trying to articulate in terms of the architecture and the impact of all these transitions on the policy aspect of this important sector. So we certainly would welcome your comments and feedback on this vision. And in today's talk, I'm just going to give you a very specific research topics that are coming out of a set of research challenges that we see as important ones. For example, how do we ensure the cyber and physical security in a power grid with massive amount of edge-level distributed resources? For example, how do we design a market and the procurement of flexibility in a carbon-neutral power system? And importantly, how do we plan and prepare this coupled infrastructure for extreme uncertainties, such as extreme weather, such as COVID? And that is going to be the focus of the talk today. I'm going to use two specific case studies to illustrate the point that there's an important need for open cross-domain data-driven framework to analyzing this extreme weather and extreme event-based impact on the power grid. So let's start from the impact of COVID. This is a project that a group of us got together during the height of the pandemic last year. And before I show you any quantitative results, let me first show you a visual result. This is the NASA's nighttime lighting image data that we obtained in the city of New York right before the COVID and during the COVID. And we have already used the signal processing to eliminate all the ambient lighting conditions. So what you see here is really about human-driven lighting, such as the lightings in the buildings and so on. And one of the things that you might notice is that the nighttime light intensity, the brightness of the figure, has substantially reduced by almost 40% between February and April this in just these 2 short months. And that is a very visual and direct illustration of the impact of COVID on the human behavior, which then translate to the nighttime lighting conditions because of the COVID. So how do we actually understand such impact through the lens of electricity sector? So we studied this, and we found out there is time varying demand reduction in New York. And this is just what you see as the load changes over time. And such changes are quite significant. But then how could we quantitatively analyze such changes? So in order to do that, we got together a group of graduate students, postdocs, and the undergraduate students, as well as the collaborators from across different universities. We put together this cross-domain open access data hub that combines electricity data, power system generation data, as well as price data, and more importantly, some sort of unconventional sources of data, such as the COVID case data from Johns Hopkins, weather data, and mobility data, as well as some of the nighttime image data. And that creates the COVID EMDA data hub, which is available and openly accessible for anybody who is interested in this. And there are some featured reports about this in IEEE Spectrum. So the way we analyze this is that we first put together these very diverse sources of data together, and we try to understand what is the impact of COVID on the electricity consumption changes. And that is the important step towards understanding what might be the factors that affects the such changes, right? So in order to establish a solid baseline, one needs to study the so-called counterfactual. That is to say, if it weren't for COVID, what would have been the electricity consumption during the first half of 2020, right? And then we try to extract the difference between these counterfactual and the actual data. And that difference becomes an attributable part that one can start to analyze what different sub-factors might affecting the changes. And in order to do that, we established this Ensemble Backcast model, which provides a reliable estimation of counterfactual data using deep neural nets. And we train about 800 models with 20% fluctuation in the hidden cell numbers and we select the top 200 with the highest estimation accuracy. So I want you to take a look at these figures. The blue curve is the actual electricity consumption, and the orange curve is the consumption of the previous year, right? One could have naturally thought that you could just directly compare the blue and orange and extract difference and attribute that as the difference of electricity consumption due to COVID. But it actually is not the case, right? Instead, one should establish the baseline, which is the backcast estimation of 2020, and then extract the difference between the blue curve and the gray curve. And that should have been the amount that one can attribute to the change of electricity consumption due to COVID, right? So as you could see in the figure, which is second from the left, the blue curve and the gray curve are actually quite matching with each other, although the orange curve and the blue curve has a sizable difference. What that means is that the baseline is actually doing a pretty good job in understanding what would have been the actual consumption if it weren't for COVID. And then one should be careful not to attribute this difference as a result of COVID, right? Instead, one should really attribute the difference between the gray curve and the blue curve as the impact from the COVID. So we conducted across the board analysis in all the major ISO, RTOs, and all the major cities in the US. Here we selected 7 of them. And you can see that there is a significant, somewhere between 7–8% to 10–12% of reduction of the electricity consumption during this period of the early part of the COVID, right? So there's a significant impact, especially in the cities. So then the next natural question would be, how could one explain such load change, and what might be the best indicator? And here we turn over to the power of cross-domain dataset. We would like to show you this dataset that was obtained from SafeGraph, which shows about the percentage of people who completely stay at home by using the mobility data of people's mobile devices. So as you can see, as we move from early part of February of 2020 all the way to middle part of April, that's when we wrote the paper, there was a significant change of people's behavior pattern, going from quite mobile into very stationary at home. And that social distancing pattern in the US becomes a very important factor for us to analyze or attribute the impact of different domains of factors on the change of electricity consumption. And here we show you another interesting discovery by looking at this cross-domain data set. While there are several different curves that you see here, such as newly confirmed cases, stay-home population, and on-site workers, and so on, they are generally, lumped into this whole category of, social distancing or, mobility in general, right? But then it's actually interesting to observe that even within this category of social distancing, there are very different flavors, if you wish. If you look at, for example, the population of on-site workers, the on-site workers are pretty much stationary all the way until March 15 of last year. And that was when the United States declared the national emergencies. So there was an abrupt change of the people's pattern in terms of on-site workers. Understandably so, because people started not to work, go to work. Whereas if you look at some other indicator of mobility, such as the visits of people into the retail sectors, how many times you go to the grocery shopping and all that, people are actually already making such gradual, slow changes all the way from middle part or late part of February until the height of the pandemic. So there was a more gradual and slower rate of change as compared to this more abrupt, sudden change in terms of the population of on-site workers. So these different flavors actually give you some, more insights of what might have been affecting the electricity consumption. And in order to quantitatively analyze such a variety of different factors on the electricity consumption, we turn to this very powerful framework that was, pioneered by the Nobel laureate economics professor Professor Christopher Sims on vector autoregression framework, which basically is a multivariate stochastic process used in modeling the linear interdependencies among a variety of different time series. In this case, we wanted to understand what might have attributed to the electricity consumption changes, right? And then we have a number of different time series data sets, from COVID health data, from the shutdown of commercial activity, social distancing, mobility, and so on. So we want to understand what exactly is a good quantitative way of attributing different factors on the power consumption changes, right? So this is what we got. This VAR models basically provides you the sort of a cumulative contribution of each of these factors on the electricity reduction part. So you can see different color bars here attribute to different time series potential impact in explaining the change of electricity consumptions. And not only you can do that, you could also do some hypothetical analysis of what if conditions, right? For example, what if there is 1% increase of the daily new confirmed cases, or what if you have 1% decrease on the mobility in the retail sector? How much would have that change affect to the long-term equilibrium of electricity consumption? So one thing that it's sort of interesting to observe is that it seems that across different factors, this mobility in the retail sector seems to be a key influencing factor. And that mobility in the retail sector shows high sensitivity in cities with mild overall demand reduction, such as Houston, right? And that's one thing that one could potentially sort of explainable, that is because of the reduction in the visits to the retail sectors that really affects a lot of the city's energy consumption, because a large portion of the city's energy consumption comes from these commercial sectors, right? And then the number of new confirmed cases, although easy to obtain, they may not be as strong of a direct influence on the change of electricity consumption, perhaps because of the compounded, impact. So to summarize, we provided in this part of the talk a very data-driven cross-domain approach of analyzing this extreme pandemic event on the electricity sector in the US. And conventionally, we used temperature, weather, and so on for load forecast. But it seems that during these extreme conditions, cross-domain factors such as mobility or even the COVID cases, public health data, would have a strong impact on understanding the behavior of the electricity sector. So one needs to sort of keep an open mind on understanding what might be an important factor for analyzing the electricity sector changes in the future. So then let's move on to another very recent but significant event that happened close to my home in Texas. This is the February 2021 Texas power outage. There were more than 4.5 million homes lost power, and there were more than 200 people died. And economic loss are enormous, and the amount of load shedding also was staggering. And you can also visually see that from the satellite image data in the Houston area. As you can see, the city got dimmed quite significantly. So while we are still in the process of trying to really understand what happened and what could have been done differently, we thought that one of the needs for the broader energy and climate research community is that one ought to have some level of reasonable baseline model that could provide as realistic representation of the grid as possible, and then trying to understand what is the impact of this blackout and what could have been done differently as some of the corrective measures were going to be made. And one of the key issues that one are facing when it comes to power grid model is that the transmission grid model are subject to the CEII, that is the Confidential Energy Information Infrastructure under the Energy Act. So they are not readily available for sharing for research or analysis purposes. However, on the other hand, during the past several years, there has been increasing amount of efforts in developing the so-called synthetic models that can provide realistic yet not real representation of the grid. And this is the model we have been developing, building upon some of the recently conducted work, both in Texas A&M and in some of our collaborating entities such as Breakthrough Energy Sciences. And this is the model we have developed, and we are proudly making it to be shared with the broader community. And this is the data we obtained from this model. We put together and published a data set containing various data during the power outage event that can be directly integrated with the synthetic Texas model, which shows the actual load and 7-day ahead load forecast counterfactual by the weather zone, and the actual generator output data from all different sources, and the wind and solar generation forecast, as well as their counterfactual and so on. So as you could see, the estimated generation capacity is the black dotted line. The red solid line is the actual generation capacity. And then the blue curve is the actual load. So as you could see, there was a significant load shedding in around February the 16th. We also have analyzed the actual and counterfactual solar and wind generation output. As you could see, before the winter storm hit, that is before February the 9th, the actual and the counterfactual matches quite well, which gave us the confidence of this model. And then during this winter outage, as you could see, the wind and solar actually got significantly reduced during this period. And that is also the case across the board in other sources of generation technologies. And we also demonstrate the validity of this model by reproducing the event timeline. Then we use the feasibility of the optimal power flow, which is the jargon in the power systems community, to schedule different generation sources to determine the amount of load shedding necessary for the grid operator. So it's a fairly delicate process, and we presented all the results that we were able to produce out of this model. So here are some results that might be of interest to you. We find that the shape of the simulated load shedding is actually quite similar to the real data, with about 88% correlation coefficient. And the notable difference is around afternoon time on February 16th, which is the peak time of the power outage. And it's probably likely caused by the delayed load restoration, even though many of the generation are already back online. So that's actually one of the human factor aspects that might be of interest for further research and investigation. And then the real load shedding for each time weather zone, we has about 95% confidence interval that matches the simulation. And the generation composition throughout the event is closely matching with the ERCOT meter data that is published. So then a very natural question that one would ask is, what could have been done differently? What would be the possible corrective measures? And here we're just illustrating 4 possible corrective measures. Winterization is the one that people talk a lot about. Adding some connection between the East and the Texas, or between the West and Texas, has been something people talked about. Leveraging demand response and flexibility is also another important part, as well as some strategic energy storage facilities. So we quantitatively study each one of these 4 corrective measures, how they could affect the outcome of this blackout. So as you could see, in order to evaluate the effectiveness of these corrective measures, one has to first define what is a metric of improvement. Here we adopted the energy not served as the one possible reliability metric. And basically, this is a commonly used reliability metric in power system reliability studies. And by looking at this number, one could have an understanding of how much total amount of energy that is not being served or being shed during an outage. So reduction of that would be indicating of the effectiveness of the corrective measures. So as you could see, we have designed some hypothetical scenarios, which includes 3 generator winterization portfolio, and A is a 10 gigawatt, B is 20, and C is 30. And then you could see that they could reduce almost kind of a linearly the energy not served by during such events. And also energy storage facilities can provide load shedding, peak clipping on top of each of these scenarios. In other words, you don't expect energy storage to solve the entire problem, but you really want this energy storage to be placed on top together with some other corrective measures to be most effective. So to summarize, we have developed this extendable and open source approach of a synthetic grid model that could serve as a platform for broader energy research community to quantitatively assess the severity of this 2021 Texas power outage. We assembled a data set, and we're continuously collecting data and share with the community, hopefully with the hope that we could collectively make a progress towards a better understanding of how to plan and operate energy systems during these stressed moments. And we also, one of the value of this such a synthetic detailed model is that it can allow you to correctively understand what are some of the possible measures that might have made a difference in mitigating the extent of the power outage. So to conclude my talk, I think there are basically 2 key messages. One, the electricity sector is going through some fundamental changes, and significant research is needed to modernize the grid to prepare itself ready for aggressive, ambitious climate solutions, extremely under extreme conditions. And we have developed an open, extendable, and data-driven approach that seems to have shown to shed some lights on both technical as well as policy measures in handling such extreme conditions. And we welcome the broader energy and climate community to join this effort in developing extendable models for extreme event analysis. Many more opportunities are out there. For example, what is going to be the carbon flow impact? What is going to be the impact on cyber physical security, and many more. And I thank you very much for your attention, and be happy to take any question that you might have.